Do this video here. It's going to involve a nickel and a dime. I've showed some videos like this before, but some new detectorists may get a detector, that's got bunches of programs on it, and you can read the manual. These manuals sometimes, they don't really tell you the whole story. And you don't need a PhD, you don't need an engineering degree to do this little test right here with your detector. Let's say you get a detector, it's got 10 different programs on it, and you're like, which one would maybe be better in modern trash? Meaning, allow the detector to give a more close ID on a high conductive object, be it a coin, silver ring, etc. Okay? So, let's say you buy... Now, the ETrack here, I've got it out here, it's got one mode really on it. You're sort of stuck with what you got, but it is a good modern trash hunter, and I'll show you how you can sort of tell, okay? By looking at these targets here. And we'll start with the ETrack here, okay? And really all you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking at the ID of how you sweep these targets, okay? Now the one thing you have to know though is you have to understand that a nickel is a low conductor and a clad dime is a high conductor. You do have to know that much. But you could use a pull tab as modern trash. You'll get the sort of the same results, okay? This nickel on this machine, okay? It'll generally rate a 13 conductive number, okay? 13, that's low, okay? And on this clad dime here, it reads 43. So what you're really looking at with one of these detectors to determine the better modern trash hunter is if you got multiple programs. Say this machine had 6 programs on it, and you go through all 6 programs. Well, you see the dime reads 43, the nickel reads 13. So you put the dime on top of the nickel and you sweep it, okay? And in this case, we get a 39. Now that's underneath what a dime reads. And you rotate these coins, put the nickel on top, and you sweep. Okay? And in this case, we get a 37. Now there's not much change in the ID, notice. 37 versus 39, but the ID provided is closer to the dime than it is the nickel, by far, okay? The nickel read 13. So that would be an indicator this machine would be an above average performer in modern trash. Now I'm going to turn this ETrack off. Okay. We'll turn on the old Equinox. Now I've not talked about single frequency, and the ETrack doesn't have single frequency. Single frequency, if you didn't know anything about frequency and you had a machine, let's say had 4, 15, 10, 20, 40 kilohertz, you could do the same thing with it. And we may show it here with the Equinox, okay? Okay, now this is part 1. The old dime reads 25. The old nickel reads 13. Now when I put the dime on top of the nickel, I get an 18, and when I reverse them, okay, I get a 16. All right? So if I go over here to part 2, if I go to part 2 and do this test with a dime on top, okay, notice I get a 14. I'm getting closer to nickel ID. And then I put the nickel on top, I actually get nickel ID. So with this test here would suggest part 1 would be your better unmasker in modern trash versus part 2. Okay, because part 1 gave ID higher. It gave the highest ID. Okay, you can also look at it that way. It gave the highest ID. I'll go back to part 1. It gave the highest ID. The dime solo reads 25, but with the nickel involved there, it reads 18, okay? And if we leave this scenario sitting here and go straight to part 2, we get a 14. So that's going to tell us pretty much that Park 1 on this machine is going to do a better job in modern trash than Park 2. Now, we'll go over here real quick. We'll look at single frequency. Single frequency right quick. If you don't know anything about frequency, you just get the detector and you're like, well, I don't know jack about frequency. Well, which one should I use in modern trash? Okay, well, here's the dime in 4 kilohertz, 26. Here's the nickel in 4 kilohertz, a 13. Now we put the dime on top, okay? And we get a 26. Okay, now I'm going to go over here to 15 kilohertz. Okay, now we got a 26 in 4 kilohertz. Now we get a 22 in 15 kilohertz. So our ID has come down. Now I'm going to reverse the nickel and the dime, and I'm still in 15 kilohertz. Okay, I get a 20. What happens if I go back to 4 kilohertz and check this? I get a 25. So again, you're seeing your higher ID with 4 kilohertz. When these two coins are together, okay? Getting the higher ID. And if we go in here, 5 kilohertz will be probably higher than 10. 10 will be higher than 15. 15 will be higher than 20. 20 will be higher than 40. Okay? So we're going to turn off the old Equinox. We're going to turn on this JS2. You know, there's all kinds of people can buy these machines. You know, you don't, like I said, you don't need an electronics degree. But the manuals, you know, they don't really go into, you know, they don't really single out. I don't believe it says in the manual for the Equinox 800 made by mine. Oh, Part 1, boys, that's your mode. Modern trash, that's it. I don't think it comes out point blank and tells you that. Okay, now we've got this old JS2 on, okay? And we're going to go here to the fast program and sweep this dime here, okay? So it reached 91. The nickel reached 64, okay? Now if I put the dime on top and sweep this, I get an 80, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to transition over here to the Park program. Sweep that same setup. I get an 85, I got a higher ID. So that's telling me the Park program is, in all odds, is a better modern trash hunter. But what if I go over here to deep high conductor? I get an 88. I even get a higher ID. Okay? Now what I'll do is I'll switch these. I'll put the nickel on top of the dime. Here's deep high conductor. It gives me an 88. Park, 83. So I got lower ID. Fast, 77. So again, the deep high conductor wins out here. Then next comes the Park, and next comes the fast program. Now, when I'm doing all the talking about this, there is some drawbacks to using, you know, this is good for modern trash, but it's not good for all detecting venue situations, okay? This is not doing this here, using deep high conductor on this machine, okay, good. It's good in modern trash, okay? But it's not so good in iron, okay? It's not so good on a bunch of low conductors. Say you're looking for $1 gold coin. Well, this is deep high conductors might not be the best mode to use. Now, what we'll do, we'll go over here into single frequency on this machine. And it's currently sitting at 17 kilohertz. Whoops. It's sitting at 17 kilohertz. And again, we'll sweep this dime. We get a 91. We sweep the nickel. We get a 64. We put the dime on top of the nickel, and we sweep. We get an 85, okay? But if I go over here into frequency and dial it down to 7.5 kilohertz, My ID just went from 85 to 89. That would suggest that 7.5 kilohertz on this machine is better than 17 kilohertz in modern trash. Okay, so we're going to turn off the old JS2. And we're going to look at this legend. There's been some questions come up about, well, how'd you figure out this beach wet mode on this machine? Well, okay, what we'll do is we'll just go straight over here. This machine has just been reset just a few minutes ago. Okay, I'm in Park Multi 1, and here's the dime, 46, and here's the nickel, 26. Okay, now I'm gonna put the dime on top of that nickel, 29. I'm 17 points under what that dime reached solo. Now I'm gonna reverse these. Okay, now I'm 28 points, or I got 28 in the meter. Okay, so I lost a point of ID because the nickel is on top, and the frequency, evidently the way this multi-frequency is set up. Okay, now if I transition over here to multi-wet, first we'll look at multi-dry. Multi-dry first. This is beach multi-dry. The dime reads 45. The nickel reads 27. Now I put the dime on top. So I'm reading 30. I'm reading only 3 points above the nickel. Setting solo, yet I've got a high conductive dime setting on top. So that would suggest multi-dry on this machine is not going to do very well around fall. Okay, Canslaw looking for higher conductive objects. Okay, now we're going to multi-wet. Beach multi-wet, the dime reads 46. The nickel reads 26. Now I lay the dime on top of the nickel. Look at there, a 42. A 42. Okay, and there's the dime by itself. So we only lost 4 points of ID with the nickel on the bottom. What happens if we reverse these? Now the nickel is on top, the dime is on the bottom. Now we got a 40 in the window. So we only lost 6 points of ID with that big old nickel sitting on top of that dime. Okay, so that would suggest multi-wet is a better performer in modern trash than is beach multi-wet dry, as well as multi-part 1. Okay, there's the nickel on top. You got 40, and if I transition straight over here to multi-part 1, 28. I'm 12 points lower. Okay, so some people out there buying detectors, you know, they may not know. Look, I was in the Air Force. I had some electronics training. You know, I understand frequency. I'm not no rocket scientist. But some people may buy a detector and they don't know jack about frequency. You don't have to know. You don't have to know a lot about frequency. If you learn how your detector behaves, that's the name of the game. And what can you do with settings based on the situation at hand and what you're trying to do, okay? And you watching this video here, me talking about these machines, some of you beginners, you may see this and you may pick up on a few things, and I do hope it helps people. But this is about as, you know, for lack of a better expression, this is the most elementary test you can do. If you get a detector that's got a bunch of modes on it and you're like, what's what here? Modern trash. This test right here probably guides you in the right direction, okay? I hope everybody enjoyed the video.